1. I attended college in a rural mountain area in the northeast. A small school tucked away in the rolling hills of the mountains. The type of place where the beauty and casual grace of nature is juxtaposed by the ugliness of humanity. The newspaper was ultra-conservative, and you couldn't sojourn too deeply into the woods beyond a few trees without seeing some trace of meth activity. You know the type of place I mean. Anyway, one of my new friends from college discovered, somehow, an abandoned train trestle deep in the woods about 5 miles from campus. In no man's land, basically. I don't remember how he found this place, because it was very much off the beaten path. The trestle crossed above a river, which placidly flowed about 40 feet below. It was actually quite beautiful, and we began going there maybe 3 times a week, just chilling on the trestle, watching the water below and the open sky above. We'd drink 40s there, smoke a bowl there, bring girls there. We began jumping off the trestle into the water below and then climbing back up. It was just a very college-y thing to do. Our chill spot, basically. So one day, just needing to get away from the dorms and away from it all, I decided to go by myself to the trestle for a swim. It was about 7 p.m., so I still had a good hour or so of dim sunlight, and I brought a flashlight for the walk home when it was sure to be dark. I made the trek through the pathways of the woods, as I had done 100 times before, left my towel and flashlight on the trestle, and jumped into the water. The water was about 10 to 15 feet deep, I'd say. It flowed almost imperceptibly. You might as well be swimming in a stagnant pool. However, maybe about 50 yards away from the trestle, the river narrows and the current picks up significantly. Then about 20 yards after that, there is a maybe 20-foot high waterfall that bubbles and splashes with extreme violence. We used to watch large objects go over and never come up again. So there I am, dimly bobbing my head in and out of the water, doing underwater flips, etc. When I pop my head out of the water, I begin to glance to the other side of the river and see a man walking towards the water. The water is kind of impeding my view, so I don't see him fluidly walking towards the water. I more see him in different stages of being closer to the water. Like flipping through a flip book. He's 15 feet away, 10 feet away, 5 feet away. I can barely give you a description, maybe 6 feet tall, pale, skinny, black hair, pulled back in a ponytail. What I do remember most about his appearance was the extremely empty look on his face and in his eyes. Like he was doing something mundane. Taking out the trash or raking leaves. I'm treading water, not knowing what to think, and I see that he is no longer beside the river. He has dove in, and is swimming pin straight directly at me, so fast. So fast. I try to swim the opposite way, but within a minute, I feel him grab my ankle and tug. I tried to scream, but water filled my mouth. While I'm underwater, he lets go and goes up for air, then grabs back on and pulls me again. It seems like he's done this before, and I never once see him after he jumped in the water. He's gradually pulling me to where the current picks up before the waterfall. I start to realize this and just fucking flipping out. Kicking, screaming, cursing to no effect. Finally, I feel the current start to take me. And as I twist away towards the waterfall, I look back and see this fucking guy just casually swimming back to where he jumped in the water, not even looking at me. This is by far the scariest moment of my life as I approach the waterfall. Long story short, I go over, and am underwater for a long time, over a minute. The water above unrelentingly pushing me under. The only reason I survived was there was a large log that had gone over, and I grabbed it and leveraged it against the bottom to push me away from the crushing water. I survive, obviously. But then I had to trek the miles back to my dorm in the dark without my flashlight, every step of the way thinking he would come back to finish the job. The next year, a football player drowned going over that fall. The news said it was because there was an extreme current due to recent rainfall, but I've always wondered about that. 2. This happened to me a few years ago in downtown Toronto, Canada, when I was about 19 or 20 years old, living in an apartment far away from my parents for the first time. I lived on a side street that was slightly sketchy, but pretty much everything around there is sketchy, so I was always more alert. Just for reference, I am a female and had 2 other female roommates. The apartment building that I lived in was an old 3-story building with 6 units, 2 on each floor. At the main outdoor entrance in front of the building, there is a porch with some chairs and a door in the middle that leads to a staircase that goes to the upstairs apartments as well as the basement. There was also a door on the left and right side of the main entrance, which leads directly to either main floor apartment. Of course, I lived on the main floor with a flimsy door that could be pushed open if it wasn't deadbolted. My shitty landlord refused to fix anything. Also, there was a basement in this building that was used for laundry, which was super creepy looking and decrepit. There were 2 doors down there, labeled as B01 and B02, as well as a separate washroom. I just assumed that they were shitty basement apartments, but I was pretty positive that they were not occupied. Sorry for the lengthy description, but you need to be able to picture the building to understand the story and realize how creepy this actually was. So it was probably around November. I remember it was cold. And we had been living in the apartment for a month or so without any issues. One day after class, I went grocery shopping and returned to my apartment when it just started to get dark, hands full of grocery bags. I get to my door and I see a woman just standing in front of my door, staring at the door, wearing a winter cap pulled down, slightly hiding her face. Side note, my roommates were not home at this point. Now, this woman was smaller than me and looked quite meek, so I wasn't feeling threatened. Just a little weirded out. Wanting to get this rude bitch out of my way, I say, excuse me? And she moves like 2 steps to the side, barely giving me room to get to my door, and also making her uncomfortably close to me when I was struggling with my keys to unlock the door. Afraid she was going to rush the door, I quickly slid in. A few minutes later, I heard a knock at the door. I assumed it was going to be this lady, so I was hesitant to answer, but did anyway. I opened the door just a crack, and the lady softly says, "Hi, would you be able to let me in through this entrance? My friend lives in the basement, and we were supposed to meet, but she doesn't have a phone." This immediately strikes me as strange given the earlier description of the basement. This was also the first time I really got a good look at her. She looked like she was in her mid to late 30s, with a sunken face and slightly unkempt. I told her that this door leads directly into my apartment, and it's the middle door that leads to the other apartments. Probably shouldn't have told her this detail, but it didn't really matter. She asked me again if she could just go through this way, and I told her no and closed the door. I think it was approximately an hour later when I heard one of my roommates coming home. She immediately headed to my room and told me there was a strange lady out front who was just sitting on one of the chairs in front of our door. I told her what happened, and we both agreed it was super creepy, and to make sure that the door was always deadbolted. We also decided to refer to her as the Mole Woman. Over the next couple of weeks, this lady would occasionally come to our building and just sit on a chair in front of our door, with her head down, waiting. She would stay out there for hours, usually at night in the winter. Very odd. I don't think I can accurately describe the uneasiness that I felt every time I passed her, just due to the fact that she was always so close to my door that I basically had to squeeze around her to get in and out of my apartment. My one fear was that if she had a knife, she could easily just stab me one of these times as I walked past. One day she was there when I was leaving for class in the afternoon, and at this point, I was just walking past and not making eye contact whenever I saw her. This time, though, one of the male neighbors from the apartment above me was also leaving and noticed the woman there. He started yelling at her to get the hell off our porch, saying that nobody here knows her and that she's freaking us all out, and he called the cops. This was the first time I had talked to any of the other occupants about the situation. He said that he has seen her standing in front of our door or sitting on the chairs on multiple occasions, and had told her to leave many times. She would comply at the time, and basically the next day she would be back on the porch. However, after the cops were called this time, we never saw her again. I still wonder about those basement apartments, and how she even knew that they were down there. I was mostly worried that she was actually telling the truth, and that there was a man living in the basement unit, without a phone, which honestly makes it even creepier to me. In the end, I think she was just a mentally unstable person, who was confused and maybe used to know someone living there. I've heard it was some sort of halfway house, before my landlord bought the property and renovated. 3. Warning, this post is long, so please get your popcorn. Backstory. Feel free to skip. I live in a big city in Australia, and at the end of my time in university, I was desperate for money and just out of an extremely abusive relationship. Now I am pretty impulsive and decided to start dancing, as I'd actually been thinking about it since I was 14, to get myself through university. It took me a while to find a club I liked the look of, but finally settled on one. I made a ton of friends, a fuck ton of money, and still had time to get good grades. As far as I was concerned, life was great. Nothing creepy ever happened at the first club I was at. Anyway, one day I get toxic shock syndrome and show up to work crying and throwing up, and I was still forced to work. I was so pissed off that I left that club and started dancing at a club that one of my friends worked in. We'll call her Jess. And this is where things started getting sketch. Note, all stories come from the second club. Story 1. Followed by a gang. Me and Jess would always hang out after work. Me 19, her 18. We'd go walk across the huge bridge in the city to a smaller part of the city and either play on the kids' playground, epic playground though, or smoke weed under the bridge. Keep in mind, this is about 3 a.m. in a huge city. One night, I noticed we were being followed by a group of men of Middle Eastern descent. Me and my friend are both very confrontational and aggressive. We both enjoy fighting. I'm probably the more paranoid, but we are both equally aggressive. So I turn around and give them the most chilling death stare I can manage, and they look genuinely surprised that we're putting up a fight. Then one of the group comes up to us, and up until this point, they had been talking in Urdu, I think. Me. Fuck do you want? all the while holding intense eye contact. Him. Me and my friends have made a bet that I can get a kiss from one of you. He was using those tones you commonly hear in the pickup artist community. Me. Stop watching shitty pickup videos, they don't work. Him. I'm not talking to you. He turns toward my friend Jess, who gives him a belittling stare. Can I have a kiss from you? Jess. No, you rude-ass son of a bitch, you. A gang of men, guys, were following us. Fuck off. We're both getting equally agitated at this moment, as the group is getting closer. The guy keeps on insisting that we're not following us, and rattling on about random shit, trying to distract. Jess notices it too, and we both start getting louder and louder, causing a commotion, which causes the men to stop advancing. If you've ever been alone in this particular city at 3 a.m., it's quiet. There's lots of homeless people and a fair few cops around too, so this tactic aimed to provide witnesses in case anything happened. Eventually they left, and me and Jess laughed at how scared we made them. Story 2. Scariest one in my opinion. Note that in stripper culture we all take care of each other. One girl in the club, we'll call her Maddie, had gotten one of her guy friends to come into the club and chill for a bit. Note that this is actually illegal, we'll call the guy Dave. Maddie is married with 2 kids and is wealthy as she owns property. When I asked her why she dances, she said for fun. And granted, it is pretty fun. Immediately, I don't like the guy, but Maddie said he wanted to buy a dance from me. I didn't end up dancing for him because I ended up booking a 2-hour VIP lap dance, so Maddie took him for a dance instead. Anyway, after work, me and Maddie go to the 7-Eleven, where we get coffee and sober up a little. Maddie says she is feeling a little dizzy, and she hadn't drank much that night. This immediately sets off alarm bells because I'm paranoid. But then alarm bells really started going off when we witnessed some men out on the town for a night of fun, just minding their own business, being assaulted by a homeless woman. Normally Maddie would laugh at this kind of thing as it was pretty common. Plus the homeless lady had assaulted me and Jess previously. Story 3. But Maddie just looked at them, sunken-eyed, and asked if everything was okay. Maddie isn't wearing clothes that are warm enough, so I walk her across the bridge, and we settle down in a well-lit hidden spot of mine that is warm and very well hidden from view. I always go to this spot after work as it's the warmest place. I test her motor skills and determine that she's been drugged, as she is becoming more out of it by the second. I message her husband, who is not in Australia and on military training exercise. I informed him of the situation and promised to take care of her. At this point, I want to call an ambulance, but Maddie is determined to stay put. She gives me her phone and tells me to answer any messages that come through. Sure enough, the first message I see is on Snapchat from Dave. I should have fucking known. Where are you? You're not bailing on me, are you? Winky face. I know for a fact that Maggie would not cheat on her husband, as they were somewhat of a super couple. So I reply, haha, what do you mean? I can see that you're in, insert suburb here. You want me to pick you up? I look over at Maddie, and by now she is sleeping. I check her every few minutes to make sure she is okay. I look down at the text. How do you know where I am? I just saw you and Athena, my stripper name, walking that way. Are you near, insert building name here? I'll be there soon, don't worry. Did that motherfucker follow us? Maddie chills that moment to wake up and projectile vomit all over the floor. My head. There were voices from each side telling me what to do. Grab Maddie and run. Use the knife you have and scare the shit out of this fucker. Call 000. Hide. No. My first concern should be the safety of Maddie, a mum, and my own safety second. not a mum. I try to convince Maddie that we need to go to the police, but she chooses that moment to tell me that she can't because she is dealing. Oh well, I thought. I prefer handling things my way anyway, but still, way to fucking tell me. So we're basically cornered in a large outside restaurant underneath a theatre, and I can hear footsteps coming closer. I'm in no position to defend both me and Maddie at the same time. I drag Maddie up the stairs and through the outside part of the theatre. It's a fucking maze in this complex. So I am dragging Maddie, who is barely conscious at this point, through the theatre maze until we get out to the other side. I demand that Maddie hand me any drugs she has, as I'm going to dump them and call an ambulance. She's barely cognitive, so I search her and turn up nothing. Then I call an ambulance, and long story short, the guy Dave was up for several charges of sexual assault on sex workers. Maddie has since denied any part in dealing and doesn't remember pretty much anything. I, however, cut contact with her as I believe that she was dealing. Not that strippers don't deal, but it's generally a code of honor to tell the other girls, for one, we won't rat on you, and for two, we know who has extra baggage and where to get weed. Story 3. Assaulted by a homeless woman. Or at least attempted. Strippers can spot other strippers instantly out of a crowd. If you are on the sweetie list, every stripper in the vicinity knows who you are and is extra nice to you. So I don't know the name of the homeless woman, but me and Jess went to the 7-Eleven for coffee and talked to the owner a little bit. The owner, a Sikh that we'll call Ra, is on the sweetie list and gives all the strippers free tampons as he doesn't believe a woman should have to pay for them. And also routinely warns us about new sketchy characters in the area. I was talking and laughing with Ra as he was working security that night as Jess got our coffee. When she comes out, Ra warns us about a homeless woman that's been harassing people. I won't include her description. I think Ra and me and Jess head off to begin our nightly shenanigans. Metal detecting for valuables on the man-made beach, smoking weed, exploring, scaring tourists, etc. I tell Jess that I really need to poop, so we head over to the public bathroom and who fucking knew? The homeless woman is in the women's bathroom. She looks at us once, screams, "You Australian dogs!" Bitch, hello? You're white? Then backs up a few paces and no joke, although I was laughing my ass off, and gets a syringe and injects herself with it. I still really need to poop, so I start heading to the men's stalls, Jess following and laughing behind me. I try to poop, but anyone with a history in biology will know your anal sphincter closes up if you've had a fright. So I tell Jess in the next stall that I can't poop, so we start walking out. The woman runs up and pulls both our hair. I suppose she was done doing heroin? And was screaming in gibberish. She's short, skinny, and no match for us, so we push her off and laugh hysterically. We leave and bitch about her for the rest of the night. However, this isn't the last time that we encounter her. A few days later, it's about 10 or 11, so there are still a few people around. I see this woman looking at herself in a store reflection. She is making the facial expression of someone that is screaming, but she's making no sounds, just staring, feigned screaming. She sees me walking by and immediately comes over to me asking for money. I accuse her of assaulting me, and she spits on me and tells me I was hallucinating. Okay, whatever. I wouldn't beat up a homeless woman. I saw her several times after this, and even asked Ra about it again, who said that he's had to call the cops on her multiple times for assaulting people. Story 4. Annoying American tourists. The stripper gods are a popular part of stripper culture. Let me start by saying that if you are an American male, you are in demand. Australian women love American men, and that goes for strippers too. Because you've grown up in a tipping culture and a culture in which stripping is more acceptable, you will be very popular with the ladies, stripper or not. Same goes for American women strippers. Love y'all. To preface this story, not to brag, but in that club I was the best damn dancer there. My pole flexibility and floor skills are insane. I could usually book at least one dance with my stage skills. I don't know what happened this night. The stripper gods in heaven blessed me for some reason. But everyone, and I mean everyone that night, wanted me. As soon as I got off stage, I was approached by at least 5 guys for a dance who were fighting over me. Nina, a lovely Russian and an older stripper, who was a veteran stripper of 18 years, told me to pick the American as it was nearly closing time and I wouldn't be able to dance for all of them. One rule in that club: if Nina tells you to do something, you do it. Not even management stood up to her. So I take her advice and escort the American to the lap room. In Australia, at least in my state, you are allowed to touch everywhere on the stripper except in the G-string area, and no mouth-to-skin contact. Anything else is considered prostitution. So this guy is touching me and everything seems normal. I grinding around on his lap, trying to see the reflection of the TV in the mirror. I go through all my usual moves: grind on right leg, left leg, floor routine, bend over, spread eagle, keep in time with the music, when he randomly says, "I wish I could cut off your breasts and take them home with me," without a hint of sarcasm or humor. I brush this off as this is only mild compared to the things you usually hear. He then starts rattling off about how he hates his girlfriend, that I'd make a much better girlfriend and he'd take me back to America with him, and I'd never have to work again. I ignore it, bored, and soon the lap dance ends. So after we come out of the lap room, the club is dead. He starts trying to get me to leave with him. I can't remember most of the conversation, but I remember he was pulling some really emotional bullshit. I remember specific things. "I can't even have coffee with you? Do you pull this bullshit on everyone? I was nice to you. I bought a dance. I'm going to wait for you outside." I was tired and pretty drunk, so I paid literally no attention, as I've dealt with this many times and know how to handle it. I told my manager about him waiting outside and called the police to escort him on. I do my usual routine: walk around the corner to the pie face, then go to 7-Eleven for coffee and a chat with Ra. So I'm talking to Ra when he asks me if I know that guy outside. Sure enough, it's Desperado watching me. I quickly explain to Ra, and he calls the cops, who give me a ride home. Hey everyone, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 3 True Scary Stories, episode 148. Here we are again at the start of another week. Another Monday creeps upon us, unsuspectingly yet again. Of course, before I go on, I'd like to say thank you very much to the 3 individuals who allowed me to use their stories. In this video, there was, of course, another one of the older stories featured. That was actually the story about the poor guy who was out swimming, and that freaky person tried to drown him. Okay, so where are we? Let me think now. Heading on through the week, I think we should be good for subscriber stories on Tuesday. Wednesday, more scary stories. Not sure about Thursday yet. If nothing else, probably a glitch video. I'm already set for paranormal on Friday, and well, let's say Saturday's open. I'll try and get a TIFU put together, but we'll get something else up if I can't get that together. You know, it's always something to enjoy. Hopefully. Fingers crossed. Well, there was actually something I wanted to bring up. Now, in the past few months, people have mentioned that I should probably set up a Patreon account. And it's something I've been a bit hesitant to do because, well, partly I don't really understand it. I don't really understand how it works. But if that's something you guys would have an interest in, then let me know. let me know what I could do with that to make it worthwhile for you guys. It's not something I'm definitely going to do, but if there's enough interest in it, then I'll go ahead and I'll set one up. I've noticed a lot of the other YouTubers are doing it. Certainly a lot of the big YouTubers have them as well. So, yeah, just have a think, let me know. I'll leave that decision in your hands. I think that's the best way to go about it. Okay, I think I'm going to head off for now, so until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.